So Spain is our main topic today. Why do you think so many patients actually consider Spain for their treatment?
I think it's a combination of factors. So we have the fact that Spain offers top tier reproductive care. It is highly regulated and it has a very friendly, patient friendly framework. So essentially, their processes are adjusted towards patients and especially international patients. So all of that combined tends to make Spain one of the most common routes when people think about going abroad. They either know somebody who went to Spain or Spain is one of the first countries that pops up. Something that also I believe that makes Spain quite interesting is they they have a broad availability in terms of not only the treatment options, but also the groups of people they enable to start the treatment. So essentially, their age limits tend to be quite flexible. We probably will talk about it more in depth in a second. But it also allows for single women to go through IVF treatments and also queer couples where one of the people in the couple have been assigned female at birth.
Crystal clear. Thank you so much indeed for that. So while we're on this topic, of course, regarding Spain, so what are the general legal regulations around IVF with own eggs in Spain? You mentioned this, of course, but can you tell us what makes it different from perhaps other countries as well?
So it's one of the most common questions that we have. So with Spain, in terms of age, there isn't a legislation that specifies the age where Spanish clinics stop offering treatments. So every clinic has their freedom to decide when is the essentially cutoff age. Majority of the clinics decide to have that cutoff age at the age of 49, 50. And we're talking about donor eggs here. In terms of own eggs, it's much more, I would say, not set in stone, as they will analyze your case specifically and most of the time decide on that. So that age limit may vary per clinic, but also per case. So in the same clinic, they may be open to treating this patient that is 45, but another patient who's also 45 may not be able to go through treatment because of their specific situation, their ovarian reserve, or other underlying conditions. So in terms of treatment for own eggs, the cutoff age tends to be around 42, 45, sometimes 47. Other regulations that donation is strictly anonymous. So if you need a sperm donor, the donor will be anonymous. So you won't be able to find out anything more than the age and the blood type of your donor. And the clinic chooses that donor for you. There is no selection process on the patient side.
All right, that's clear. Thank you so much indeed. It's very important to note that. So thanks a lot for that. So also, again, very common question. What kind of success rates can patient expect with their own eggs?
That is indeed a very common question. And there isn't one answer. Every clinic has the freedom to calculate success rates their own way. So you cannot compare success rates between clinics. One clinic can display success rates, calculating them per, for example, 3 cycles. So they will have very high success rates. Other clinic may calculate their success rate for a specific age group, but not display that information. So success metrics, success rates have become more of a marketing metric than actual data for patients. They're meant to draw the patient in, but they're not providing actual useful information for the patient. Especially because we are also different and every case is so different that it's essentially impossible to use that metric, even if we know how it has been calculated, one-on-one to ourselves, because of our ovarian reserve can be different. We can have other medical condition, the sperm quality may be different. So it's really, really important to, instead of try to look up the clinic success rate, choose the clinics based on other factors, reviews or things that are important to you, other things, and then ask during a medical consultation, what is the predicted success rate for your specific situation? And that way, when you speak to, for example, 2 clinics or 3 clinics, you're able to compare that information and have actual data that you can then choose the clinic based on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think it's very, very important to remember that, because I think many times you just ask how is your success rate, but that doesn't really explain a lot to your particular case. So thank you so much for saying this today as well. Okay, so let's go to some costs. How does it work in Spain? Can you tell us a little bit on that?
So I think what's important to state before we actually go into numbers is that there are a couple of factors that are included in the cost. So the cost that you will see on the website, or the kind of initial quote you will get from the clinic, usually just includes the treatment. So you're looking at 1/4 of the cost, not evenly, but just a piece of the puzzle. Additionally to that, you often will be you will need to consider required additional costs, and those can be very different depending on the clinic, on your situation, on your specific needs. So those can be freezing, or the storage, or the qualification tests for you and your partner, or just you. So those costs are usually not included in the main price. So you will need to pay additionally for those. There can be other factors that are required but need to be kind of added additionally. Aside from those two, we have medication. Medication is very, very rarely included in the costs. In Spain, almost never. So you will need to calculate around 1,500 euros additionally for the medication. That number may be smaller depending on the insurance you have in your home country. I have patients from Canada who have insurance in Canada and are able to get medication much more affordably through their insurance in Canada. So it does depend on your insurance, on how much medication costs in your country. Sometimes it may be cheaper to get it in your home country. Sometimes it may be cheaper to get it in Spain. So medication. And lastly, we have additional optional costs. So things such as add-ons that are necessary, but you may want, or the doctor may suggest in your case. They most likely won't be required, but in your case, they may be highly suggested. So for example, the genetic testing is the most common one that people tend to purchase additionally. But if you are buying genetic testing, so PGTA or PGTM, that cost is often also split into couple categories. So it is really, really, really important to query the clinic on what is included in each cost and whether there will be any additional costs. So moving back to our first cost, so the cost of the treatment, it is always, again, worth asking what is included. Most clinics in Spain actually include things like ICSI, so the fertilization method that tends to be a paid add-on in the UK. That is not the case in Spain. In Spain, it is already included. It is the default, so you don't have to pay additionally for it. And for example, EmbryoScope is often free and included in the package that you purchase. So it is worth checking, because sometimes you may think that's something you'll need to pay additionally for, but it's already included, and the other way around, unfortunately. So for that cost, you would be looking at between 4,000 and 6,000 euros. That is the most common cost between the good clinics, and it tends to vary depending on what is included in your package. Some more advanced packages may be more expensive, some more popular clinics may be more expensive than others. And in terms of required additional costs, again, it does depend what you will need, but I would say it's roughly 1,000, 2,000 euros that you should kind of add on top of the cost of the package just to be safe. The medication I've already mentioned, between 1,000 and 1,500 euros. But again, if you're lucky enough to have good insurance, you may be able to pay much less for it. But there are also the cases where you may need more medication, so you may end up paying more. So it is always good to have that in the back of your head, that all of those costs are rough averages. So you may be on the either side of the spectrum, or you may be one of the cases where it's actually more. And the optional costs we have, what that we spoken about at the end, that is possibly PGTA if you want to do genetic testing, PGTM if you want to do the more advanced genetic testing. So those tend to quite increase the cost, but it does depend what kind of genetic testing you need, how many embryos you're looking at testing. So it's best to get the quote directly from the clinic for your specific case. And again, make sure to always ask what's included.
Sounds great. Thank you so much indeed. I see more questions are coming in, so thanks a lot for that. Before we go for your questions, I would like to ask you, because we are discussing costs, how does the cost compare to other countries in such case?
So for example, in the UK, you are, and similarly in Ireland, you're looking at probably around 20-30% more. So Spain is actually more affordable than UK, Ireland in most cases. In Czech Republic, for example, you're looking at 15% less. Czech Republic, maybe a little bit more affordable. USA, you're looking at twice more at least. The United States is a quite expensive destination, which is why we're having more and more patients from the United States and Canada heading to Spain. In terms of other European countries, I would say it's dead in the middle, quite average. So in terms of common destinations such as Greece or North Cyprus, Spain is very similar cost-wise.
All right. Thank you so much. It's really important to know that. And I see your questions right here. So I think we can go next to your questions simply because they are spot on, I would say. And I'm sure you've received this kind of question a lot. Do you have any recommendations for clinics in Spain? Is there like a best clinic in Spain?
Again, a very common question. We do have a lot of patients who ask, what is the best one? I would like to go to the best one. But that's the thing, there isn't a best one. And I know it may seem that, oh, everybody will say that because, they don't want to tell you which one is the best. That's not the case. There really isn't the best one. Most good clinics will give you the same quality of treatment, but the little details will matter. So, for example, you may need a specific treatment, or you may be looking for specific patient experience, or you may be looking for any add-ons. For example, you want to do a specific genetic testing, and there's a clinic that specializes in that. There are little bits and pieces that make every single patient so unique that it essentially is impossible to give blueprints on even which group to put in which clinic. So what we do, we usually go quite in depth into the story and to the history, what the patient is looking for, what is their so far journey has been looking like. And we also touch on bits and pieces that we believe are important, such as preferences in terms of where you would like to be, what makes you more comfortable, what makes you safe. Because stress is such a negative factor in this journey and can affect the journey and the outcome. So if you believe that, being near the sea makes you calmer and will make you more comfortable, that may be completely valid and is important to tell us or to include in your research, because if you can lower the stress even slightly, it is worth it. So sometimes even things that may seem trivial may play a part in what we believe and what I would recommend you to consider. But in terms of best clinics, if you do your research, if you check whether they're providing the treatment, if they align with your budget, they will most likely, all the clinics within your budget and all the clinics that have good reviews will provide you with a similar opportunity. So, unfortunately, there isn't a straight answer, but it is important to listen to your gut and unfortunately do the research or use some additional help, join Facebook groups, speak to somebody. It is help we offer for free as well. So if you do need to get in touch with us. We will be happy to help.
Brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. And that's really important. And actually, there is a question. So, are you able to tell us what is the best clinic for endometriosis? You've mentioned this, right? That sometimes you just simply need to look for the clinic that is, focusing perhaps on this.
And that is one way to start narrowing it down, because there are less clinics good at endometriosis than the whole group of clinics, but there's still a lot of them. So again, unfortunately, there isn't a best clinic that helps patients with endometriosis. Endometriosis and PCOS are now such a common, unfortunately common struggles that patients with infertility have, that there is a lot of clinics that specialize in treating patients with endometriosis or treating patients with PCOS. So while this helps us narrow the number of clinics down, it unfortunately still leaves a very big pool. So what is important on top of that is, the exact situation, the prior history, the type of patient experience you're looking for. Because even in that group, even if we narrow it down, you still have very different types of clinics. You have big chains of clinics that specialize in endometriosis, and you have smaller clinics that are a boutique style of experience that specialize in endometriosis. So there is a broad pool to choose from. And I can see that Tonya from my team shared our email address. So if you would like to go more into the details of finding a best clinic for your specific situation, feel free to contact us at patientcare@ivfmedia.org, and we'll be happy to help. But it will require a bit of a deep dive in order for us to know what works for you specifically.
Yep, sounds great. Thank you so much indeed. And let's have a look. So, how can I check which clinics have the best success factor for women age 45 plus with own eggs? Anything you can advise here?
So it is difficult to find that information. Clinics aren't very transparent, especially in terms of treating women with own eggs above the age of 42, sometimes even 38. It is because the chances significantly drop around the age of 42. And it is important for the clinics to be transparent. What are the success rates like for your situation? But you unfortunately won't be able to find that on their website. So that is, again, something that we often do know because we've worked with patients and we have spoken with clinics, but it is not something that clinics publish online. So again, that is something that we can do a deep dive during a consultation if that's something that you would like to do. But unfortunately, it isn't something that you would be able to Google or find out. You can also, when you reach out to clinics, you can ask them straightforwardly whether they would be open to treating women with own eggs around that age, and what is the projected success rate that they have if they are open to that. Not every clinic will accept a patient around that age for the treatment with own eggs, but if they do need to be transparent with you and clearly state what your projected success rate is. It is also important that because most likely they will suggest using donor eggs, to either set a boundary if this is something that you're completely not open to. You can state out in your first message that it is something that you're not open to, or if it's something that you're open to considering, you may go into the conversation with the clinic on potentially doing a tandem cycle, so combining doing treatment with own eggs with simultaneously preparing a donor for you in case the treatment of own eggs fails. So there are options, but it's good to be as transparent about what you're looking for with the clinic and ask them to be transparent with you as well.
Yes, thank you so much indeed. And could you share with us the timeline? Because also there is a question from Trina. How long would you need to travel for? Can you tell us a little bit on that? This is also important.
Sure. So in terms of timeline, let's start at the very, very beginning. So with medical consultation, usually the wait time for the medical consultation is around a week to a month, depending on the clinic size, depending on how busy they are. There are times within the year where clinics are more busy. There are times when they're a bit less busy. So it may depend hugely whether it's going to be a week or whether it's going to be a month. After your medical consultation, usually most clinics don't have a waiting list. So once you get through and have the medical consultation, you're able to start as soon as possible if you have all the required tests ready and your body is ready to start the stimulation. So once you start the stimulation, there are a couple of ways this can go. You can either start the stimulation at home and get the medication either shipped to you, or you can get it in the clinic, or you can get the prescription sent to you from the clinic and get the medication in your local pharmacy or an online pharmacy. If you started at home, you will need to go through at least one ultrasound during. And the stimulation lasts around 12, 14 days, sometimes a bit less, but on average, we're looking at that time frame. And some clinics may ask you whether it's possible for you to do the stimulation in Spain. Some clinics prefer it. They have the high success rate doing it that way and allows them to monitor you, do more ultrasounds to pick that perfect moment for the egg retrieval. If you don't have that option, if the clinic works with international patients, they will most likely accustom you and do it the way that works for you. So the egg retrieval, you can, if you're doing the stimulation at home, you can come for the egg retrieval. Or if you're doing it in a clinic, then the egg retrieval is already, you don't have to travel for it. But the egg retrieval date is not really set in stone. It does depend on your ultrasound. So it may be that your body will be ready a little bit earlier or a little bit later. So it is important to book the egg retrieval flexibly so that you can travel a few days early or a few days later, or you can stay for a little bit longer if needed. So that trip needs to, you need to calculate, 2 days additionally. But if you're flying just for the egg retrieval, you would be looking at 2 days if you literally came on the day and flew the next day. But just to be safe, we don't really advise that. And it's best to book, a few days ahead, stay for a little bit longer to be on the safe side. And now, once your eggs have been retrieved, the not stimulation, the I'm missing a word, and it is the embryo creation process is beginning, and that is taking usually around 6 days after the egg retrieval. And what is important to remember that there are two options here. You can have a fresh transfer or you can have a frozen transfer. And with a fresh transfer, you are basically staying from the egg retrieval to the transfer. You could potentially fly back, but it would literally be flying back and flying back to Spain on the next day, or staying back in your home country for a day or two. With fresh transfers, they are not recommended in every case. So if you're doing genetic testing, you may not have an option to do a fresh transfer. Most clinics need to do it on a frozen cycle if you're doing genetic testing. There are some clinics that offer fresh cycle genetic testing, but it is more expensive. On top of that, you may have a hormonal imbalance after the egg retrieval, or your endometrium may not be ready for the transfer. So sometimes, just to be safe, clinics prefer to do a frozen cycle. If you're going through a frozen transfer, then you can do it within your next cycle or a cycle after that. So after your egg retrieval, you're flying back, and then you're flying in for the transfer. So to summarize it, the egg retrieval takes just, let's say, an hour. So you just need to make sure you book that flexibly, so that you can fly in a bit early or a bit late. To be on the safer side, you should probably calculate around 5 days with the egg retrieval date in the middle. For the transfer, you can fly in, have the transfer the next day, and fly back on the next day. It's not recommended to fly on the same day as your transfer, so it's best to stay overnight. But that doesn't require you to stay for any longer. The transfer usually is set in stone. There are always things that can happen. So it's always best to book flexible tickets and flexible accommodation, because, your endometrium may not end up being ready. There are things that can happen. But you would be looking at just 3 days in Spain for the transfer itself. So overall, the clinic adjusts as much as they can towards your availability, your holiday time. Of course, your cycle is the one that determines the exact dates, but other than that, they will take into the account how many days of holidays you have, when you can travel. If there are months that you cannot do it, then they will adjust towards the months where you're available.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that's pretty clear for everyone. Of course, if there's anything else, you know what to do. Go ahead, type the questions in. There are more coming in. I see it here. What are your views on PGTA? You've mentioned this PGTA as well. And the question is, what are your views on PGTA for over 40? I'm sure you've also heard lots of questions on this.
Yes. So it should always be discussed with the doctor in terms of whether PGTA should be done in specific cases. For women over 38, really, it's recommended as a kind of standard procedure. So essentially what PGTA does is it's a biopsy, but biopsy of a very safe part of the embryo. So the biopsy is taken from the bit that later on turns into the placenta. So the biopsy is showing the number of chromosomes. So if there are any chromosomal issues that are related to the number of chromosomes, PGTA will be able to detect that. It will rate your embryo. So sometimes you will have a higher quality embryo rated through the PGTA, a lower quality, and then you will have ones that will be purely rejected through the PGTA testing. For those good quality, medium quality, low quality, it is often up to you and your doctor which ones you decide to transfer, and whether you do still decide to transfer the ones that are poor quality. So I know there are often mixed feelings in terms of PGTA. But so far, the medical studies have proven that it is very safe and highly recommended, because once we turn 38 and as we age, we may encounter more and more chromosomal issues in the embryos.
That's clear. Thank you so much. And there is also a question on the cost of PGTA for per embryo, let's say. Yeah, how does it work?
So in terms of the cost of PGTA, there are three elements often. Some clinics just give you the costs in bulk, but some separate the cost into three. So there is a biopsy, there is the analysis, the test itself, and often you pay then additionally for the results. So there are three bits. Some clinics do divide into two, some have it in bulk. It very much depends. So for PGTA, you often pay for a set number of embryos being tested. So for one embryo with PGTA testing and the biopsy, you would be looking at around, to be on a safe side, I would say €2,000.
Okay, €2,000 then. Thank you so much. Let me have a look. So there are more questions here, and of course, the some you already mentioned, which clinic specializes in over 45. As you mentioned, it's not that easy to actually point to one for this particular patient. But let me have a look. There is also one here. Can you transfer frozen eggs from your home country to Spain and do the treatment there? How does it work?
In most cases, yes. It does depend where your eggs are frozen. It does depend on on the country, but there are courier companies that specialize in transporting materials such as eggs, sperm, embryos between countries. So it is commonly done, and you should be able to move your eggs to a clinic in Spain. The only instance when that may not work, aside from legislations in the country, if you haven't been tested as thoroughly as the destination clinic requires you to be before the eggs were collected or before the embryos were created in case of frozen embryos. So it is always best to check with the clinic that you're thinking of moving the embryos to, and ask them whether, what they require in terms of the frozen eggs being moved to their clinic. So in most cases, it is possible, and you just need to take into account the cost, because you would be looking, again, depends hugely on the source country. But it can be anywhere between €1,500 and €6,000 if we're talking about United States or Canada. Sometimes even more if we're talking about smaller countries that is not a common route for the courier company.
Definitely very important to check everything, for sure. So thanks a lot. Again, not an easy, it's not like a yes or no kind of question, and that's it for those, right? All right, next question. Again, I'm sure you've heard this before. Can you choose a donor sperm based on the at least some features like age, hair, color, nationality, perhaps?
Unfortunately not. So in Spain, you won't be able to do that. If this is something really important to you, then there may be different destinations to consider. In Spain, the donors are matched with you by the clinic, or using your phenotype. So this is a requirement in Spain, that the donor needs to be phenotype matched to you and or your partner. So they will be taking into account your nationality, your eye color. They often use your photo and match you with the donor based on that, or based on a written description, depending on the clinic, and whether they have an internal bank or external, or use an external bank. So the clinic does that for you. It is done by people who do it every day, often by a committee of people who meet daily and match donors with patients. So it isn't I would say, a decision done briefly. It is a very important decision, and the clinic knows that it is an important decision, and they want to have the child match your family, and they want to provide you with the best option, and they cannot give you a person that doesn't phenotype match you, and that is stated by law. Another thing with donor matching is that some clinics use AI. So sometimes it's additionally paid, sometimes it's done by default, but they may use AI to increase the chances of matching you with the best potential candidate. So essentially, AI scans the photo, scans your face, and matches your features with the potential donor. And on top of that, of course, it is always verified by a person, but it is just as an additional step that potentially may give some people more comfort or maybe a preferred option for them.
All right. Crystal clear. Again, thank you so much. And let's go back to the PGTA testing. So I heard that this is for Tatiana, I heard that to make PGTA test, it can be 1 month before we can transfer.
So
right?
yes, so basically once your embryos are created, then they get biopsied, frozen, and you wait for the result. That wait time can take a very different amount of time depending whether the laboratory, the genetic testing is done within the clinic or whether it's sent to a different place. So that can vary, but usually you should have the results for your next cycle. So you can do that and have the results, let's say 2 weeks after the embryos were biopsied and sent for the biopsy was sent for test. And then you start your stimulation and you have the transfer basically the month after you went through the egg retrieval.
All right, crystal clear. Again, thank you so much. And again, I think that you've heard a lot about PGTA, and lots of questions on that. Any risk to the embryo when you do PGTA? How does it?
Not really. I haven't heard about a situation where that would happen, and I know this is a worry, and I know that there are some stories, and there is a group of people that isn't keen on PGTA testing, and I understand it is always a worry especially when something is outside of our hands, and we feel like it may damage the embryos, but in reality, it is a very safe procedure. And multiple studies suggest that there is no damage done to the embryos and that it is incredibly safe and worth doing to decrease the risks. Of course, always worth talking to your doctor, especially if you have worries about it. They may be able to share a bit more, and they may be able to explain the process better, more in depth, especially for your situation, and provide you with the pros for your specific case, and possibly that will also make it less stressful.
All right, thank you so much. And there is a question here, a short one. Are the protocols different from those used in the UK?
I would say so. Obviously, it varies per clinic, and there are definitely clinics that do this. There are definitely clinics in the UK and in Spain that use the same protocols. But from what I have seen, my patients from the UK or from Ireland who have had treatment in the UK were then treated with a very different protocols in Spain. From what I've noticed, and again, this isn't about every clinic in the UK, but from what I've noticed, the protocols in the UK tend to be more less customized towards the patients and more done similarly between patients. So I haven't seen much variety between my patients in terms of the protocols they had. But it may vary per clinic. Again, it may be just a bias between the ones that I have seen. But I do believe that there is more customization in and kind of adjusting the treatment towards a specific case of a patient in Spain.
Yeah, that sounds right. Thank you so much indeed for that. And let's have a look. There are some questions like you mentioned this, which clinic specializes in over 45 or endometriosis? And as you mentioned, it's not really easy to provide that. This is more difficult to find,
Yes.
right?
And if somebody would like to speak with us about finding a clinic for them, feel free to contact us at patientcare@ivfmedia.org, and somebody from my team or I'll be happy to jump on a call and see whether we can help you match a specific clinic for your specific situation.
That sounds amazing. I'm sure Joanna and her team will be happy to help you out. There is one more question here about ovarian rejuvenation, which is, I guess, more and more common, and some clinics, not all, but some clinics in Spain also use that. Anything you can say on that? Have you seen any clinics that actually offer it? How does it work?
I would say majority of the clinics in Spain do offer it. It's definitely something you should talk to the doctor at the clinic about, because it may make sense in your case, may make a bit less sense in your case. It is down to the doctor to really provide you with the insight whether or not it should be used in your case, but it is very broadly available in Spain.
True, that's true. The question here is about high success factor for older women, but as Joanna said, this is something that is very personal. It's always best to directly check with doctors to discuss it, and you can also get in touch with Joanna so she can perhaps narrow down some of the clinics that actually do it. And I think it's always best to do it that way. Okay, sorry. I just need to see. Okay, do the doctors in Spain speak English, or do I need to have a translator? Interesting. Still very important topic to
Yes,
for sure.
it is very, very important. And majority of the clinics that handle international patients, both the coordinator that you'll have and the doctor will speak English, and will speak usually a very good English. Sometimes there are clinics where the doctor may have a bit less, maybe not perfect English. If that is something that you're not comfortable with, you can even ask right away the clinic that you want somebody who is fluent and comfortable in English. And on top of that, a lot, if not majority, of the clinics who handle international customers, they have both doctors and patient coordinators who speak other languages than English and Spanish. So if you are German or Italian, you may actually be able to have a doctor who speaks fluent Italian or fluent German, similarly with a coordinator. So it is worth checking, because if speaking in your native language would make you more comfortable, then you may be able to find a clinic that has a doctor that speaks in your native language. But in terms of English, it is very, very common for clinics to have both patient coordinators and doctors fluent in English, and all the documentation, all the communication is done in English. So at any point, you don't have to worry about, not understanding the process or feeling lost in the clinic. If you choose a clinic that handles similar cases and patients from all over the world, you won't feel like you are in a Spanish clinic. You will have patients from all over the world that you may see in the clinic, or you will have a coordinator who will be fluent and happy to help you, similarly with a doctor.
This is something you should actually not really worry about. Most of the time it's covered. You don't need to feel that you will go and you will not understand anything. So I think it's a very important note here. Okay, how do they manage aftercare? If successful, do you just pay for private scans in own country, or do the clinics link up with the fertility hospitals? anything you can advise here?
So basically, you once the transfer is completed, you travel back to your home country and you have your beta blood test done in your home country. So that is around the 10th day post transfer. After that, once the transfer has been successful and you are pregnant, you will be going through the pregnancy care in your home country. The clinic will, of course, and should be checking in with you all throughout the process. Of course, less once you pass the 3-month mark, but of course, they will be more than happy to hear from you. If the transfer is unsuccessful, the clinic should reach out to you and talk about what's next and provide you with space if needed, but also with options to what they suggest doing as a next step. So the aftercare in terms of kind of following up with you and checking in is done by the clinic via email or call. But in terms of moving forward with the process, so all the blood tests, ultrasound, all of that is done in your home country. So you can do it through your insurance in public hospitals if you have that available, or you can do it privately in your home country.
Okay. Thank you so much. That again, very important. And we will be slowly finishing. So if you have more questions, go ahead, type those still. We have some time, so go ahead, type those in. And I would also like to ask you, so are there any guarantees patients can expect? And if so, how does it work?
So there are clinics that have guarantee packages that offer you a certain guarantee or a full refund or a percentage of a refund. Those tend to be more common in the egg donation programs, but can still be found in IVF packages as well. But you may need to meet quite strict criteria. So not everybody will be able to use such program. Some of these programs, I would say the most common one that I have seen for IVF with own eggs is the tandem cycle, not necessarily tandem cycle, but essentially preparing a donor for you for further cycles. So you go through, you pay for a package of 3 cycles. And if all the 3 cycles are unsuccessful, you receive a refund, but only the first cycle is with your own eggs and the further 2 are with donor eggs. And that way you have multiple options. And if unsuccessful, you can receive a refund. There is a lot of terms and conditions worth reading, and the process of qualification is quite long. But if this would be an option for you and something you're considering, it's always worth checking. Some clinics often, not often, but some clinics may have a program where you may get a discount over further cycles, or if you purchase a package of 3 transfer or a cycle and 3 transfers, you may receive a discount. So there's also those bits and pieces that it may be worth inquiring if the guarantee package isn't for you or you are not able to qualify. So in terms of kind of those types of packages, those are the most common options.
Okay, thank you so much. And are you able to tell us, so are those packages common? I mean, how often do you happen to have a conversation regards to this with your patients?
So quite often with patients who are looking for donor egg treatments, because those packages tend to be quite common. Then I would say at least 60% of clinics do have a guarantee package that offers some sort of refund, if not more. In terms of using your own eggs, it is not available in every clinic. I would say maybe 10-15% of clinics have the guarantee packages. And you also need to consider that the sperm quality has to be good. So if you're using your partner's sperm, that is an important requirement that will need to be met. If you're using donor sperm, then that solves that. But with partner sperm, it is something that you will need to take into the account. But it is something that if your budget is a little bit more flexible and you want to have that certainty that you will receive a refund if it doesn't work, it may be worth checking those programs.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And let me see, some more questions are here. So, can I ask the clinic to find a sperm donor for me with specific characteristics? Very common, I'm sure.
Yes, and Spain not so much. You can of course request it, and you can of course let the clinic know, but they will still prioritize the phenotype matching you with the donor. So they won't be able to tell you whether they have used your kind of specifications, the things that you would be looking for. And so you won't know whether they have used it, but there may be sometimes in the forms, there is a place where you can include what is important to you about the donor, and the clinic does their best to take that into the account, but not always they'll be able to. And always the phenotype matching takes priority.
Yeah. All right. Definitely. Thank you so much. And Tonya, thank you so much for your help here as well. Our team member here, Tonya, is replying to your messages as well. As Tonya mentioned, Fertility Clinics Abroad is not a clinic, but they will be happy to help you find one. So you can get in touch with them directly. So thanks a lot for that. And as I mentioned, we will be finishing. So final few minutes, if there's anything else you wish to add, go ahead, type this in. And before we finish, one more question from me. What kind of medical care and patient support can international patients expect at the Spanish clinics?
Spain has a very high quality in terms of medical treatment as well as patient experience. And this is on average. And if you go to one of the, I would say, well-reviewed clinics with good patient experience, good medical care, you can count on most commonly better experience than, for example, in the UK or in Ireland, unfortunately. So Spain tends to be I would say they are leading in Europe in terms of medical advancement, in terms of their embryology lab, in terms of the quality of the treatment. And their processes are very thorough. So once you essentially contact the clinic, you are then moved step by step within the process. So it is very different than in some other countries where you may be met with a bit more chaotic approach. Spain tends to be very thorough, and you would see that in their processes. In terms of patient care, they will most commonly contact you via email, or they will call you. Sometimes they are also able to use WhatsApp, so they can exchange messages with you as you go along in the process. And of course, instead of a call, you can always have a Google Meet or an online call instead of an actual phone call. Some clinics also offer kind of add-ons that kind of add to the experience. So for example, airport pickups, or they may have a list of hotels you can use with discounts, and hotels nearby to the clinic. So there are those little bits and pieces that I believe that add to the whole experience. Similarly, with they may help you get the medication. They will be there with you. Your coordinator is usually the same person from the beginning until the end. So you have that person of contact. If you're looking for a good patient experience and a very thorough care aligned with high medical standards, I believe that Spain is a very good destination.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much indeed. And we are almost at the end of our session. So thanks everyone for joining us today for your questions. But remember, if you have more questions, you can ask them here, but also Joanna will be available in her team. Finally, I would like to simply ask you, what advice would you give to someone considering starting IVF treatment with their own eggs in Spain? Anything you can advice? What usually is important to remember?
Just to kind of put everything that we have said today together, research is very important. If you don't want to do the research, you can contact us. There are different services you can use, but you can find us on Fertility Clinics Abroad. You can also research clinics on fertilityclinicsabroad.com or other sites such as eggdonationfriends.com or fertilityroad.com. So on all of those sites, you can find more information on the clinics available in Spain, for example. You can also join Facebook groups. We do moderate a Facebook group called IVF Abroad as well. But there are different types of groups that you can join where you can exchange information with other patients, ask for their opinions, ask for their reviews. It is important to not go through this alone because there is a lot of information online. So as much as you can have support, whether it's from us or from somebody else, it is useful, and it is always worth having that second opinion. Don't speak to just one clinic. Get at least 2 consultations, 3 consultations, have something to compare, and be able to form your opinions. Ask them about the success rates predicted in your specific case, because as we know, it's important to know what the clinic believes your predicted success rate is. If it's very different between the clinics, it's often one inquiring why and whether every single clinic is transparent with you. Inquire about additional costs. Have them be transparent with you what is going to be included in the cost. And I would say, lastly, listen to your gut, because sometimes we just get a feeling where we're not clicking with the doctor. We don't feel comfortable. Something just doesn't align.
Yep.
There isn't the best clinic, as I said at the beginning, and there isn't the best doctor. So if you don't feel comfortable, and the doctor may be great, but it just may not be the best doctor for you. So listen to your gut and see who you connect with. Sometimes it may take more than 3 consultations to find a doctor you connect with. But with each consultation, you'll be able to know more or less what you're looking for, and it will bring you closer to finding it. So yeah, don't forget to listen to yourself, and I hope you'll find the best choice for yourself. And if you need any help, just reach out to us at patientcare@ivfmedia.org, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Our help is free. You can book a consultation with us, and we will help to find a clinic that is the best for you.
Perfect summary, I would say. Thank you so much indeed for this very informative session. I do believe it was very useful for you. And as Joanna mentioned, if you wish to reach out, you can do it. And I'm sure Joanna and her team will be happy to speak to you, to guide you, and discuss anything you'd like. So thanks a lot. Okay, thank you so much for your comments. We can see we've seen those, so thanks a lot for that. And of course, I can only encourage you to simply reach out. Okay, Joanna Jewell, head of patient experience Fertility Clinics Abroad, was our guest speaker today. Thank you, Joanna. There will be more events coming up, so stay tuned. Go to myivfenses.com and see for yourself that there are more and more events coming up. So don't hesitate, sign up, and I hope to see you here soon. Joanna, I know that we will see each other quite soon as well. So thanks a lot for today. Very interesting. Thank you. And have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.